Girl is innocent. She should be given a chance to prove her loyalty.
One man started a war that killed thousands, destroyed noble houses, and brought an entire kingdom to its knees. And he did it all while smiling, whispering in the right ears, and pretending to be everyone's friend. Petyr Baelish didn't have dragons, didn't command vast armies, and wasn't even born into real power. Yet he came closer to winning the Iron Throne than almost anyone else in Westeros. Let me show you exactly how he did it. If you're ready to see how the most dangerous player in the game almost conquered everything, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this. So who was Littlefinger before all the chaos? Born as Petyr Baelish, he grew up as the son of a minor lord whose lands were so small and worthless that people literally called them the Fingers. These weren't sprawling estates or fertile farmlands. We're talking about rocky peninsulas that couldn't grow much of anything. Young Petyr had nothing. No inheritance worth mentioning, no army, no dragons, no claim to any throne. What he did have was something far more dangerous in Westeros than any sword. A brilliant, calculating mind and absolutely zero moral boundaries. As a boy, Petyr was fostered at Riverrun with House Tully. That's where he fell in love with Catelyn Tully, the woman who would become Catelyn Stark. But Catelyn was promised to Brandon Stark, the heir to Winterfell. When Petyr challenged Brandon to a duel for Catelyn's hand, Brandon nearly killed him. The humiliation was total. Petyr realized something crucial in that moment. He would never beat the noble houses by playing their game with their rules. He was too lowborn, too poor, too insignificant. So he decided to destroy their game entirely and build a new one where he held all the cards. Here's where things get truly diabolical. Everything that happened in Game of Thrones, all the death and destruction that consumed Westeros, can be traced back to one calculated murder. Littlefinger convinced Lysa Arryn, who had been obsessed with him since childhood, to poison her own husband, Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King. Why? Because Jon Arryn had discovered the truth about Queen Cersei's children. He knew they weren't King Robert's kids, but the product of Cersei's incestuous relationship with her twin brother Jaime. Jon was about to expose this secret, which would have thrown the realm into chaos, but not the kind of chaos Littlefinger could control. So Littlefinger had Lysa poison Jon with tears of Lys, an undetectable poison. Then he told Lysa to write a letter to her sister Catelyn, claiming the Lannisters had murdered Jon. This one letter set everything in motion. When Catelyn received it, she begged her husband Ned Stark to go to King's Landing as the new Hand of the King to investigate and protect King Robert. Ned, being the honourable man he was, agreed. He rode south with his daughters Sansa and Arya, walking straight into Littlefinger's trap. In King's Landing, Littlefinger played his part perfectly. He pretended to be Ned's ally, while feeding him just enough information to keep the investigation going. He told Catelyn that the dagger used in an attempt to kill her son Bran belonged to Tyrion Lannister. This was a complete lie, but it worked. Catelyn seized Tyrion, which escalated tensions between the Starks and Lannisters to a breaking point. Meanwhile, Littlefinger was secretly working both sides, whispering in everyone's ears, turning allies into enemies. When Ned finally discovered the truth about Joffrey's parentage, he made the fatal mistake of trusting Littlefinger. Ned needed the City Watch, the Gold Cloaks, to support him when he moved against the Lannisters. Littlefinger promised Ned he would secure their loyalty. But when the moment came, when Ned confronted Cersei in the throne room, Littlefinger betrayed him. He held a knife to Ned's throat and delivered one of the most chilling lines in the entire series. "I did warn you not to trust me." The Gold Cloaks turned on Ned, slaughtered his men, and arrested him for treason. Now here's where Littlefinger's genius really shows. The plan was for Ned to confess his crimes, take the black, and join the Night's Watch. This would have ended things relatively peacefully. But Littlefinger manipulated events, so that the sadistic boy King Joffrey ordered Ned's execution instead. Some people think Joffrey acted on impulse, but there's evidence Littlefinger whispered in his ear or used reverse psychology to ensure Ned died. Why did Littlefinger want Ned dead? Because Ned's execution guaranteed war. It meant the North would never bend the knee. It meant the Starks and Lannisters would tear each other apart. It meant chaos, and chaos was exactly what Littlefinger needed. Ned's death triggered the War of the Five Kings. Robb Stark was crowned king in the North. Stannis and Renly Baratheon both claimed the Iron Throne. The entire realm descended into blood and fire. And while everyone else was fighting and dying, Littlefinger was climbing. He used his position as Master of Coin to make himself indispensable. He owned brothels across King's Landing, which doubled as spy networks. He knew everyone's secrets, everyone's weaknesses, He could offer information to the Lannisters one day and plot against them the next. Nobody trusted him, yet everyone needed him. Then came the Purple Wedding, Joffrey's death. Littlefinger orchestrated this too. He worked with Olenna Tyrell, who wanted to save her granddaughter Marjorie from a lifetime married to that psychotic monster. Littlefinger smuggled the poison, called the Strangler, into the wedding in Sansa's hairnet. When Joffrey dropped dead choking on his wine, Littlefinger had already whisked Sansa out of King's Landing. Everyone blamed Tyrion Lannister, which was perfect for Littlefinger. It removed Joffrey, a wild card he couldn't control. It turned the Lannisters against each other, and it gave him Sansa Stark, the key to the North. In the books, Littlefinger's plan becomes even more intricate. He married Lysa Arryn, making himself Lord Protector of the Vale. This gave him control over one of the most powerful regions in Westeros, complete with fresh armies that hadn't been touched by war. When Lysa became too unstable and threatened Sansa, Littlefinger pushed her through the Moon Door without hesitation. He blamed her death on the singer Marillion, who confessed after being tortured. Just like that, Littlefinger controlled the Vale completely. His plan for Sansa reveals his ultimate endgame. In the books, he intends to have Sansa marry Harold Harding, the heir to the Vale. When sickly little Robert Arryn dies, which Littlefinger can easily arrange, Harold becomes Lord of the Vale. Sansa, as Harold's wife and the last known Stark heir, can then reveal her true identity and claim the North. The North and the Vale united under Littlefinger's control. And Littlefinger makes it clear that he wants Sansa beside him, not just as a political tool, but as his queen when he takes the Iron Throne. This is where you see the full scope of his vision. While Cersei and Daenerys were fighting over who gets to sit on the throne, Littlefinger was playing a completely different game. He wanted them to destroy each other. He wanted the great houses to bleed themselves dry fighting over scraps while he quietly accumulated real power in regions they'd forgotten about. When the smoke cleared, when the dragons were dead and the armies were decimated, Littlefinger planned to march in with the Knights of the Vale and the North, with Sansa Stark by his side giving him legitimacy, and take everything. The beauty of his plan was that it almost worked. Think about where he got. He rose from being the son of a nobody to Lord of Harrenhal, Lord Protector of the Vale, and Master of Coin. He controlled vast wealth, had one of the best spy networks in Westeros, and commanded the loyalty of an entire region. He had manipulated every major house into weakening themselves. He started with nothing and built an empire through pure cunning. But here's where it all fell apart, and honestly, the show didn't do him justice. In Season 7, Littlefinger's characterization changed dramatically. The man who had survived and thrived in King's Landing, who had outmaneuvered Varys, Cersei, and everyone else, suddenly became sloppy and obvious.
Your faithful sister Sansa.
His attempts to turn Sansa and Arya against each other were clumsy compared to his earlier schemes. He didn't seem to have backup plans or contingencies. It's like the writers forgot who Littlefinger was. His death came in Winterfell's Great Hall. Sansa summoned what appeared to be a trial for Arya, but in a twist, she turned and accused Littlefinger instead. She laid out all his crimes: murdering Lysa Arryn, conspiring to kill Jon Arryn, betraying Ned Stark, and starting the War of the Five Kings. Bran, now the three-eyed raven with the ability to see all of history, provided evidence of everything Littlefinger had done. Lord Jon Royce, who had never trusted Littlefinger, refused to help him escape.
Thank you, Sansa. I have known you since you were a girl. I've protected you.
Littlefinger begged for his life, but Sansa pronounced him guilty. Arya stepped forward and slit his throat with the same Valyrian steel dagger that Littlefinger had used to frame Tyrion back in Season 1. Poetic justice. Even George R.R. Martin criticized how the show handled Littlefinger's final arc. In the books, Littlefinger is still alive and scheming. He's smarter, more patient, and more dangerous than the show portrayed in those last seasons. The book version would never have been caught so easily. He would have had escape routes, contingency plans, ways to disappear if things went south. The show needed to wrap things up, so they simplified his character and gave him a rushed ending that didn't match the genius he'd displayed for 6 seasons. So what can we learn from Littlefinger's almost successful master plan? First, information is power. Littlefinger built his empire on knowing everyone's secrets. His brothels weren't just profitable businesses, they were intelligence networks. Every noble who visited left behind information Littlefinger could use. Second, patience pays off. Littlefinger didn't try to seize power immediately. He planted seeds, manipulated events, and waited for the right moments to strike. Third, never underestimate someone because of their birth. Littlefinger proved that a clever mind with no moral boundaries can topple kingdoms. But his downfall also teaches us something crucial. Littlefinger's fatal flaw was that he underestimated the Starks, especially the children. He thought he could manipulate Sansa the way he manipulated her mother. He didn't account for Bran's supernatural abilities. He didn't realize that Arya had become a trained assassin. He played the game brilliantly against adults who played by the rules of politics and power, but he couldn't adapt when faced with opponents who had completely different skills and perspectives. The tragedy of Littlefinger, if you can call it that, is that he actually loved Catelyn Stark. Or at least he convinced himself he did. Everything he did, all the death and chaos, he partly justified by claiming it was for her and later for Sansa. But that's the thing about Littlefinger. He was so consumed by his own ambition, so twisted by years of scheming and manipulation, that he couldn't distinguish real love from possessive obsession. He didn't want Catelyn or Sansa as partners. He wanted them as trophies, proof that he had beaten the noble houses that once looked down on him. Littlefinger remains one of the most fascinating characters in Game of Thrones because he represents something terrifying and real. He shows how one intelligent, amoral person with no supernatural powers or armies can bring down kingdoms by understanding human nature and exploiting it ruthlessly. He didn't need magic or dragons. He just needed to know what people wanted, what they feared, and how to use that against them. In another timeline, one where Bran didn't develop supernatural powers, or where Arya didn't train with the Faceless Men, Littlefinger might have actually won. He could be sitting on the Iron Throne right now with Sansa as his queen, ruling over a weakened, exhausted Westeros that had torn itself apart exactly as he planned. That's how close he came. One man with nothing, but his wits and complete moral flexibility almost conquered the Seven Kingdoms. The War of the Five Kings killed tens of thousands of people. Entire noble houses were wiped out. The Starks were scattered and nearly destroyed. The Lannisters lost much of their power and wealth. The Tyrells and Martells were eliminated. All of this happened because Littlefinger had Lysa Arryn poison her husband and write a letter. Think about that. One letter, one lie, and the realm burned. If you found this deep dive into Littlefinger's master plan as fascinating as I did putting it together, make sure you're subscribed. There are so many more Game of Thrones secrets and strategies to explore. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you think Littlefinger deserved his fate, or should he have been given a more complex ending that matched his brilliant mind? Thanks for watching, and remember, in the Game of Thrones, chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder, and Littlefinger climbed higher than almost anyone, until the Starks finally cut him down.